So you're scrolling through your phone, maybe checking Zillow or your property management app, and you add up the numbers. Your rental property here, your duplex there, maybe your primary residence with all that equity you've built up. And then it hits you. You're sitting on $500,000 in real estate. And at first, you feel pretty good about yourself. Like, wow, I actually did something. But here's the thing nobody tells you. $500,000 in real estate isn't just a bigger number than 200,000. It's not just more houses or more doors. It's a completely different game. The wealthy don't just have more money than you. They play by rules you don't even know exist yet. And 500K? That's the exact threshold where those rules start applying to you. If you're new here, this channel breaks down how real estate actually builds wealth. Not the guru stuff, not the get-rich-quick nonsense, just the real math and strategy behind it. Hit subscribe if you want more of this. Alright, so let's talk about what most people think having $500,000 in real estate means. They think it means you're rich. They think you've made it. They picture you sitting on a beach somewhere collecting rent checks. And look, I get it. $500,000 sounds like a lot of money, because it is a lot of money. But here's where most people get it completely wrong. They think 500K is the finish line. Like you can just coast from here. Maybe buy a nicer car, upgrade the house, take that vacation you've been putting off. And that's exactly the trap that keeps most people stuck at this level forever. See, there's this concept I call invisible wealth thresholds. These are specific dollar amounts where the entire system treats you differently. Banks look at you differently. Investors look at you differently. Opportunities that were literally invisible to you before suddenly appear out of nowhere. And 500,000 in real estate. That's one of the biggest invisible thresholds there is. But most people never realize they've crossed it. They just keep doing what they were doing at 200K or 300K. Same strategies, same mindset, same limitations. And then they wonder why they're not growing anymore. Think of it like a snowball rolling down a hill. When your snowball is small, you're doing most of the work. You're pushing it. You're packing more snow onto it. You're exhausted. But at some point, if that snowball gets big enough, something changes. The snowball starts pulling you. It gains its own momentum. 500K in real estate is roughly where that shift happens. The question is whether you're going to let it pull you forward or whether you're going to fight against it because you don't understand what's happening. Let me talk about the psychological shift for a second because this is huge. When you have one rental property, you're an investor. When you have two or three, you're still an investor. You're someone who invests in real estate. But somewhere around the 500K mark, your identity needs to change. You're not just an investor anymore. You're a portfolio owner. And I know that sounds like just words, like I'm being dramatic, but hear me out. An investor thinks about individual deals. Should I buy this property? Does this one make sense? A portfolio owner thinks about systems. How do all my assets work together? How do I minimize taxes across everything? How do I use what I already have to get more? It's a completely different way of thinking. And if you don't make that mental shift, you're going to keep operating like someone with one or two properties, even though you have the resources of someone with way more. Here's a stat that might blow your mind. According to Federal Reserve data, households with 500,000 or more in real estate assets are in roughly the top 8% of all American households. 8%. That means 92% of people never get to where you are right now. And it gets even crazier when you look at who actually builds real wealth from here. The gap between someone with 500K in real estate and someone with nothing isn't that interesting. But the gap between someone with 500K who leverages it correctly versus someone with 500K who doesn't, that gap is enormous. We're talking millions of dollars difference over a decade or two. Now, let's get into the actual math because this is where it gets really interesting. Most people think 500,000 in real estate means you have $500,000, but that's not how real estate works. That 500K can control way more than 500K. Let me show you what I mean. Say you have 500,000 in equity spread across your properties. With traditional financing, banks will let you leverage that at around 75 to 80%, so that 500K in equity can control somewhere between $1.5 to $2 million in actual property value. And here's where the magic happens. You're building equity on $2 million worth of real estate. Your tenants are paying down $2 million worth of mortgages. You're getting appreciation on $2 million worth of assets. But you only had to come up with 500K. This is why rich people keep getting richer while everyone else stays stuck. They understand how to use what they have to control way more. But wait, it gets better. And I'm not just saying that to keep you watching. This actually does get better. At 500K, you've proven something to the financial world. You've proven you can acquire and manage real estate. You've proven you can make mortgage payments. You've proven you're not a total idiot who's going to default on everything. And that proof unlocks doors that were completely closed to you before. Let's talk about commercial lending. When you were starting out with one little rental property, banks treated you like a risk. They wanted perfect credit, huge down payments, all this documentation proving you weren't going to mess up. But at 500K, you start qualifying for commercial loans, portfolio lenders, private lending relationships. These are loans based on the asset and your track record, not just your W-2 income. That means you can actually grow faster because you're not limited by how much money your job pays you. I know people making $60,000 or $70,000 a year at their day job who own over $2 million in real estate because they understood how to use commercial lending once they hit that threshold. And then there's syndications. This is something most people don't even know exists until they have real money. Syndications are basically group investments where you can put money into large apartment complexes, commercial buildings, self-storage facilities, stuff that would be completely impossible for you to buy on your own. Most syndications have minimum investments of $50,000 or $100,000. When you were scraping together $20K for a down payment on a single-family rental, that was out of reach. But now, you can actually play in that sandbox. You can diversify into asset classes that most people will never touch. Let's talk about 1031 exchanges because this is huge for wealth preservation. A 1031 exchange lets you sell a property and roll all the profit into a new property without paying capital gains taxes. The IRS basically lets you defer those taxes indefinitely as long as you keep rolling the money into new real estate. Now here's the thing. When you have one property worth 200K, a 1031 exchange is nice but kind of limited. But when you're sitting on 500K in equity, and some of that is in properties with huge gains, the tax savings become massive. Like we're talking potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars you don't have to give the government. Money that stays in your portfolio compounding instead of going to Uncle Sam. Here's something nobody talks about. When you have 500K in real estate, your entire relationship with your career changes. Think about it. Most people are terrified of losing their job because their job is everything. It pays the mortgage, it pays the bills, it funds their lifestyle. They're one layoff away from disaster. But when you're sitting on a portfolio generating, let's say, $3,000 to $5,000 a month in passive cash flow, suddenly your job becomes optional. Not that you're going to quit tomorrow, but the dynamic is different. You negotiate differently. You take risks differently. You're not desperate. And I can tell you from experience, when you're not desperate, better opportunities come to you. It's weird how that works, but it does. That passive income number isn't made up, by the way. At 500K in equity, properly leveraged and managed, you should be generating somewhere between $3,000 to $5,000 a month in actual cash flow after all expenses. Maybe more depending on your market and strategy. That's $36,000 to $60,000 a year that shows up whether you work or not. That's more than a lot of people's entire salaries. But here's where I gotta be real with you, because this is where most people mess up. 500K is dangerous. Not because of anything about the number itself, but because of what it does to your psychology. See, when you were grinding to get here, you were hungry. You were careful. You analyzed every deal obsessively. You said no to bad properties because you couldn't afford to make mistakes. But now you've got some cushion. You've got proof that you know what you're doing. And that's exactly when people get sloppy. Lifestyle creep is the first killer. You start thinking, well, I've earned this. I can afford a nicer car now. I can afford a bigger house. And maybe you can. But every dollar you spend on lifestyle is a dollar that's not compounding in your portfolio. That nicer car isn't going to buy you more properties. That fancy vacation isn't generating passive income while you sleep. I'm not saying you should live like a monk forever, but there's a reason most people plateau at this level, and lifestyle creep is a huge part of it. The second killer is bad deals. When you had 200K, you couldn't afford a bad deal. One mistake could wipe out years of progress. But now you've got some buffer. You've got equity to play with. And that's when people start convincing themselves that questionable deals are actually fine. That property that doesn't quite make the numbers work? It'll probably be okay. It's in a good area. That's how you end up with dead weight in your portfolio. Assets that don't perform, that drain your cash flow, that hold back everything else. Let me show you what the difference looks like over time. Take two people who both hit 500K in real estate at age 35. Person A decides they've made it. They cash out, refinance a bunch of that equity, buy a boat, upgrade their lifestyle, and coast. They've still got real estate, but they're not really growing anymore. Person B understands what 500K actually means. They use that equity to scale. They leverage into commercial lending. They diversify into syndications. They obsess over tax efficiency and portfolio optimization. 10 years later, person A might still have 5 or 600K in real estate. Probably less, actually, because they've been pulling money out. But person B, with proper leverage and compounding, they could be sitting on 2 to 3 million. Same starting point, completely different outcomes. That's the power of understanding what 500K really means. And it's not just about the money. It's about the identity shift I mentioned earlier. Person A still sees themselves as someone who got lucky, who happened to accumulate some real estate. Person B sees themselves as a wealth builder, someone who uses systems and leverage to grow assets over time. That identity difference drives every decision they make, and those decisions compound over years into radically different lives. Here's something I want you to think about. It's called opportunity cost mindset, and it's one of the biggest differences between people who plateau at 500K and people who blow past it. When you understand opportunity cost at a deep level, you start seeing your equity differently. That 500K in equity isn't just money you have, it's potential money you could be making that you're not. Every month that equity sits there not working hard, you're losing the returns it could be generating. This drives wealthy people crazy. They can't stand seeing money sitting idle. They're always thinking, what else could this capital be doing right now? Let me give you a concrete example. Say, you've got 200K in equity in a property that's appreciated a lot, but only generates $400 a month in cash flow. You could just keep it. It's fine. It's making money. Or you could 1031 exchange that equity into a different market, a different asset class, something that generates $800 or $1,000 a month in cash flow. Same equity, double the returns. But most people never make that move because they're emotionally attached to their properties. They think in terms of what they have, not in terms of what their assets could be doing. That's the opportunity cost mindset difference. I also want to talk about the network effect because this is something that surprised me when I first hit this level. When you have 500K in real estate, you start attracting different people into your life. Other investors want to talk to you because you've actually done something. You get invited to different conversations, different events. People start bringing you deal flow because they know you can actually act on it. This is why the rich seem to have access to opportunities nobody else knows about. It's not some secret conspiracy. It's just that when you've proven yourself at a certain level, people include you in things they wouldn't bother mentioning to someone starting out. The deals, the partnerships, the joint ventures that happen at this level can accelerate your growth way faster than anything you can do alone. Now look, I've thrown a lot at you in this video. Let me bring it back to where we started. You crossed 500K. You saw those numbers add up and felt something. Maybe pride, maybe a little disbelief that you actually got here. That feeling was real. You accomplished something that 92% of people never do. But here's what I need you to understand. 500K is not the destination. It's not the finish line. It's the launch pad. It's the point where you've built enough velocity to really start moving. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to coast and protect what you have? Or are you going to use this platform to build something way bigger? The banks are ready to treat you differently now. The opportunities are there if you know how to find them. The leverage multipliers are available to you. All that's missing is you understanding that the game changed when you crossed this threshold. You're not playing the same game you were playing at 100K or 200K. The rules are different now, and they're actually in your favor if you know how to use them. So go look at your portfolio again. But this time, don't just see $500,000 in real estate. See $2 million in potential assets you could control. See the passive income that could replace your job. See the tax strategies that could save you hundreds of thousands of dollars. See the launch pad, not the destination. If this helped you see real estate differently, subscribe. More of this coming soon.